The all-new Warhammer Combat Patrol magazine has finally dropped, and I'm here to show you how to put together each issue, including a painting guide for each and every model inside all of these issues. Starting off with issue 1, this issue includes 2 minis, a set of dice, a Combat Patrol size battle mat, and a booklet containing lore, info, and all of the data sheets you'll need to play your Combat Patrol. After taking a bit of time to look over everything myself, I cleaned up my desk and put on a white sheet cover, and I started by getting the Captain off of the sprues. Cleaning up all the marks left by cutting the mini off the sprues, it was then able to be put together. Both the minis in this issue are push-fit models, meaning there is no glue required to actually put them together. You just push fit and you're ready to go. The Captain now going on his base, it's now time to start on the Winged Tyranid Prime. Taking that one off the sprues as well. And then cleaning up, obviously. Then I was able to put it together the same as the Space Marine Captain, as it's also a push-fit model. With both models now being put together, they are both finished, ready to be primed and painted. Breaking out the wet palette and 2 brushes, it's time to start on the Captain and Terminator armor. I primed both the minis black off camera, and we're starting with Macragge blue for the Captain and Terminator armor. Now don't worry if you don't have any primer or anything like that. You can paint directly onto the plastic even though it's not recommended, or what you can do is do a couple layers of your black color and that will allow you to paint on top of that as a sort of primer. Like I said, we're covering the model in Macragge blue, and I'm using 2 thin coats here as this will allow us to have proper coverage of the model. Then, for my first ever time, I am going to try and do some wet blending. So I'm going to put down some Macragge blue very watered down Macragge Blue, and then quickly grab some Abaddon Black and try and put a gradient on the leg, as this will give us our gradient if I wet blended it well enough. I then also did the same thing on the shoulder pads and the other leg, just to make sure I've got that gradient going from black at the very bottom of the shoulder pads and legs, and then at the very top it will be blue. It was then time to start on the big edge highlight. Now this one can be applied very roughly because we are going to apply more highlights over it. This is a simple mix of Macragge Blue and Calgar Blue on the edges of the Mini. With Calgar Blue as a thinner edge highlight, not covering the other edge highlight that we did, to make sure that we're not going to hide the work that we've already done. For our extreme highlight on this, we're going to be using Lowthorn Blue, applying it just to the tip of the edges of the edge highlight we have already done. Now that the armor is done, it's time to move on to the cape, and we're going to be using Wraithbone for a base coat. To get shadows for the cape, we are going to be applying Xandri Dust to the recesses, or otherwise known as the inner sides of the cape, and this will give us our shadows. I then used Morghast Bone as a gradient from the shadows to the higher up points of the cape. Then for the raised edges of the cape, I used White Scar, and this will give us our extreme highlight on the cape, and I'm not gonna lie, I really like the way this cape turned out. now it's time to move on to all of the metallic pieces, starting with Lead Belcher for our base coat, covering everything that should be metal in Lead Belcher. Continuing with Lead Belcher on the shoulder pads included. Starting with the Aquila, I used Retributor armor as a base coat. I also applied this to the other areas that required gold. I then used a wash of Agrant's Earthshade to get into the recess areas of all the gold pieces. Then I applied Liberator Gold as a highlight on all the gold pieces once the wash had completely dried. Then finishing up with Lead Belcher on some of the vents and pipes that I missed earlier on. For the purity seals and the handle of the sword, I use Mephiston Red. Highlighting all the metallic bits with Ironbreaker, before doing the final edge highlight with Stormhost Silver. edge highlights of the black parts of the bolters was easy by using Mechanicus Grey and just doing a simple edge highlight. Then for the shield and all of the little paper hangy bits, I used Wraithbone as a base coat. I then attempted to do some freehanding with Memphis and Red, but as you can see, I am not very good at freehanding. I quickly added Retributor armor to the Imperialis symbol on the side of the Stormbolter. Then, using the same method that I used on the cape, I am using Xandri Dust on the Purity Seal papers as the shadows. Then it was time to move on to the face. Now, I am not very good at painting faces, but this is my first proper attempt at painting a face with multiple layers. So we're going to be starting with Cadian Flesh for the base coat. Then for our first set of highlights, we're going to be using Kislev Flesh, just to basically cover most of the area in highlights. I then used White Scar as an extreme highlight, applying this to just the highest points of the face. Then for the hair, I just used simple 2 thin coats of Wraithbone. I then used Leadbelcher for his service studs. For the recesses on the face, I was using Guilliman Flesh as the shade. Then it was time to move on to the Dead Tyranid, starting off with a base coat of Wraithbone. I then used a very thin down Magos Purple as the flesh parts of the Tyranid. For all the armor parts, I then used the Leviathan Purple contrast paint, making sure to apply this twice after each layer had dried to make sure I've got full coverage. For the edges of the armor, I used Genestealer Purple, applying this to all the raised areas on the armor pieces. Then we use Fulgrim Pink for the extreme highlights as well as the little streaks you put on the armor. Finishing up with Mechanicus Grey for the rock that our captain is standing on. Then for the final detail, Blood Angel's contrast paint for the tongue on the dead Tyranid. And that would be our Space Marine Captain and Terminator armor done. Now it's time to move on to the actual Tyranid, starting with Wraithbone as a base coat over the entire mini. Then for all the fleshy bits of the Tyranid, I used a thinned down Magos purple contrast paint. Then moving on to all of the armor, I applied Leviathan purple to all these areas. I made sure to apply 2 coats of it to make sure I get full coverage. Then I applied a very thin down Magos purple to these wingy bits that connected these wings together. Then for the actual wings I applied Guilliman flesh, and then I also put a bit of Wraithbone across the top just to give that a little bit more contrast. Then for all the little claws, including his massive talons, I used Abaddon Black, but for the talons themselves, I just applied it halfway up. Then it was time to start the edge highlighting on the armor. We're going to be using Gene Stealer Purple for the edge highlights. Then for the extreme highlight on the armor, we're going to be using Fulgrim Pink, as this will give us more of a gradient on the armor. Then for the edge highlight on all of the talons and the claws, we're going to be using Mechanicus Grey, where we applied to all the black pieces. Then applying Blood Angel's Red to the tongue of the Tyranid. Now it's time to show you how both these minis look completely finished. Big massive thank you to everyone who stuck around to the end of the video. It does really help. Subscribe if you are new. Please feel free to leave a like on this video if you did enjoy it. I'm going to be posting all of the issues that come out, at least the ones with all the models. The ones that just come with paintbrushes and paints, don't really need to cover them. But I'm going to be showing you how to paint all of the issues on this, and we're going to be using the minimal amount of stuff possible. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you want to catch more content, we'll be uploading more content soon. Catch you guys in the next one.